Hey everyone, and thank you all very much for joining me. This is my video breakdown of my level for Blocktober. In this, I'm going to be going through my level, discussing my design decisions, what made me think about using these techniques that I'm going through, and why I chose to do certain things in the level, and breaking that down for you all to see. Hopefully you'll understand how my mind works when I'm making my levels, as well as kind of learn something, or maybe you'll see something that you can actually give me feedback on. All of that is awesome and will be quite happily welcomed. But before that, I'll give you a little bit of a rundown of what my Blocktober level was, so you can have a better understanding of what you see before we jump into it. The thing that you should know that this is a third-person cover shooter. Now this is not based on any game or in any realm. This is just a third-person shooter that is a small combat level. There are no other objectives than to just wipe out the enemy and move to the next point within the level. So just keep that in mind. This task was given to me by my friend Simon Cooper, and it was a great task, so I do appreciate him giving that to me, and I've taken this to blockout level. Now I set myself the goal of just finishing up within that of October, so I managed to do that, and what you're going to see are the results of this. Any questions, just let me know. The tools that I'll be using for this comes from the third-person cover shooter, which is available in Unity, as well as Blockout, which is free and also on Unity. As you can tell, I'm using Unity as the game engine for this. Now keep in mind though that although I've done the blockout, there is some basic AI, sorry, I really messed that one up. But the AI is very much work in progress. I'm still kind of fine-tuning them as well and trying to make sure that they react how I want them to react them. So you'll see a bit of glimpse into them and how they work, but do keep in mind that they are still work in progress. We're mainly going through the actual blockout itself. I know this is not perfect, but there is some cool stuff in there, and it is a level that I'm overall proud with and quite happy, hence me showing it to you all today. So without any further ado, we're going to now move on to the next step, which is the gym that I've set up. So let's just go straight towards it. Before we kick into the actual level, I do want to explain a few things, because some of you may not have seen my making of videos. So I'm going to briefly talk about this. So a couple of things you can see, I've created my own gym to try help with my setup and give me kind of my own prefabs to use and help with, building not only this space but future spaces as well. One of the things that I did, and you may notice, is if I put my gun away, wrong way that I'm going, you notice how the camera zooms out. This is due to one of the packages that I'm using. I'm using the third-person cover shooter, which is a great package, which is on Unity, and I'm also using the Blockout, which is free on Unity, and you should check these out. These are what I'm using in order to create this level overall. One of the things is I kind of keep that this gun here will keep the camera how I want to use it. This to me is the ideal camera height. So with that, I've kind of created these architecture pieces to help with that. So I've scaled up the door in order for players to use this freely without any kind of cutting of the camera or issues there, as well as being able to make sure that we can still pop over in order to shoot. Another thing that you may notice as well is I've changed the color of the walls and the floor. The reason for this is to help with readability, to create a bit of contrast, so when the player sees the wall and the floor, they're slightly different. So again, just helps with things like that there. Another thing after that was I created these small kind of blockout pieces which we can use for cover, just to help with scaling and spacing for me to know what's best to use. So I'm going to be using about a buffer zone of 3 meters, with this being a third-person cover kind of shooter, and roll over here, that we can use, and I have 2 meter for cover and just slightly over 1 meter in order to shoot over. Actually, I think it is just 1 meter, sorry. After this, I then created these kind of prefabs that you see here to help make my space feel a bit more understandable and readable, as the space that you'll be seeing, and I'll mention a little bit later, is an art gallery, so I need these kind of props to help sell this space. Now, one thing that should be kept in mind is orange combined with these textures are low cover, and blue with this texture are high covers. This to help to indicate if this an artist was taking on this any further, that this would be readable for them to understand. And one thing is that these may be only suggestions for the artist not actually what they should place instead, as I want to help give them freedom. But it also sells to someone who may be reviewing this space a bit of context compared to using just blocks over here to help again sell this. Now with a few things, I have a few others that you'll see within the level, but again, more kind of shelves, lights, paintings, all of these to help again sell the space and make sure it matches with the theme. Different types of pickups, health, random loot, and ammo as well, which will be dotted around the level. So now that you've kind of got a bit of an understanding of the space and how I'm going to create it, we're now going to go and move on to the level actually itself. Okay, now that we're in the level, I'll give you a bit of a breakdown. So this level takes place within that of an art gallery. Now this is just a small level, more built for combat than any other purpose. But with that in mind, one of the things that I noticed when I was getting this level tested is not many people understood what it was with just the blockouts. So as you can see, I've created a few different assets to help sell what the space is. But not only that, it helps keep players into where they are and where they're going. Because one of the things that was said when first playtest was it felt more like an office. So with these spaces, oops, sorry, wrong button. With the spaces here, you can see that I've tried to create some sort of abstract spaces, abstract kind of paintings, as well as different statues to help sell what this space is. Another thing that I've tried to do, and you can see it with these kind of floating, art pieces above, is help to create a frame. I've used that as well with these kind of pillars. This way it draws in the player's eye towards the frame. Now not only are we positioned straight for it, but it helps again push that in the direction as well. And with that as well, I've kind of thought about a few different things that I can do with this. So as I mentioned, I've used a bit of framework, but another thing I tried to do was instead of it just being a straight line, I added what would be kind of like a seat, a sofa for this, so the player would have to move right or left in order to get to it, just breaking up the traversal instead of being a straight line. Another reason I've done this is I'm trying to push the player slightly to the right. The reason for this is not only do we see that this contains some loot here, but I've also put that there so the fact that you can then see what's going on here. We can see there's a window and this leads further down. This here is using a bit of foreshadowing as well as revealing a little bit more information about the other part of the level as well. So this is why I'm trying to bring the player over to the right, and this is how I've tried to do it by putting an object in the middle, as well as having different types of loot, as well as having this window here. Adds a very stark contrast, and also with the starting position as well, you can see that this starts a little bit further and therefore a bit more in frame to the right compared to these doors here on the left. Again, just helping to pull in the player a bit over. A reason that I've added these doors as well is the fact that it's really crucial to sell that there is more space than what we just see. It's not just here is the room and that's it. There is a lot more to this space, giving that illusion of life and the space being bigger than what it actually is and being built for more of a purpose than what we're using for gameplay. So with that then, the player can then pick up some loot, see further down into what the space is and progress moving forward. Now one of the things I also wanted to do here is add some ammo here. So we have different types of pickup as well as that, so that again it prepares players, giving them a hint of what is it that they're going to be able, well, what is probably going to be before them in that of combat. So that there is here our first space. Again, more used to help push the player in a certain direction to the right, as well as having a little bit to explore so players can see a bit of the art and selling the overall theme of the space as well. So little things like that to help set the tone as well as what's going to happen. So now that we've done that, we're going to move on further now to the actual corridor itself. One of the things that I wanted to do here was the fact that when you're going further and further down, it feels like you're going further down into kind of a disadvantage. As you can see here, we have an enemy in the corridor. So I've created these kind of covers instantly, but they do have a bit of, we'd say, obstacles in order to be able to see the enemy and take him out. The player does have choices to either take them out here or to follow the enemy. The enemy will start in this position looking here and then progress as we saw, moving to here and then down that door. Another reason that I put the patrol like this is the fact that then the players can see that there is a door over here on the right. Another way that I've helped to do this is with these kind of beams as well, pointing in. So if we just take a step back in this frame here, you can see that they're instantly pulling you and drawing you to over this section here. Because one of the things I noticed when I was building the space is it's quite hard to see, obviously, with you coming down on the right and this flat wall. Oh, there he is again. But then you can see a bit more with these fact that we have a guy here pulling you, as well as these beams as well. So as I mentioned, you can either take him out or leave him be and follow him across. One of the things that I wanted with this though was an easy kind of task to take someone out here. So that way then the players can choose to follow him and use stealth to take this enemy out instead. And I thought of it more as like an easy win for the player, so that they can constantly move through and kind of get an advantage. Now there is no stealth takedowns, so what I'll use instead is that of a baseball bat as well. And I seem to be doing no damage, but get a little bit of and as you can see here, there we go. But what you can see here though is the fact that we have some sort of loot. So if the player chooses to follow the enemy around, that leads them to a bit of a side path where they get rewarded with loot, as well as another chance to take out the enemy here. One of the things that I wanted to do with this space as well is have it a different kind of contrast with that of the space here, making it feel a bit more cramped so players feel that they have to take out the enemy. Now it's a bit of a small space, some sort of text, maybe some art, different types of things that then the player can use to hide it behind in order to take out the enemy, as well as getting a little view or window into the main combat space. Now, this is not the only space that you can get a view with. You'll also get it when you're moving across this space here. So when you come across down here, you can see him, and once he goes away, we have this view as well. And in this we can get a sense of what's to come here. And you can see the window from where we were, so that way we can get a bigger sense of now seeing this space again, but from a different angle, as well as choosing to hide behind this space to take out the enemies, or go even further by using this open door and coming across. This next combat area, I've done a few things to try keep this kind of focused in the space we have. So as you can see, we can see the original window we saw through, showing that we've shown a bit of progress, and also trying to help to keep this as a local landmark using these lights here. Another thing that I've tried to do with these lights is try and use this as a spot in which the fact that players will know that this is, as mentioned, a landmark, but something they can actually run around and go interact with. And another thing to help make this space feel kind of more kind of a combat little arena space is by creating a small volume, which you can see with these windows up here, raising it, and the edges kind of matching that of what we see with the stairs here. And by having this, again, it tries to help sink in that this is a combat space, that this kind of unique kind of space will be orientated for that of combat. And with that as well, you can see that I've kind of mixed up different heights from low cover to high cover. So this way, when the player has a bit of an advantage, you can see here on the enemies, which will be around here, and I'll show you the enemies in level a little bit after this, that the safety of the enemies is much higher because of this high cover in contrast. And one of the things to notice is that my cover buffer zone is that primarily of 3 meters minimum. So that way, when you have something like cover here, you can instantly just roll into it, as well as roll alongside it as well. So that way players can kind of move through the space seamlessly. And one of the things, the other reason that I quite liked these lamps here is the fact that instead of having a centerpiece which the player can't move around, the players can actually move through this space entirely as well. So that way, you know, it's still memorable, but they still have it coming through, and also, as I mentioned, the fact you can see it from the previous window as well. And with that, I want to talk about what's next. So you'll be fighting different enemies here, and also if you decide to leave the previous enemy we showed walking around this corridor, he can come through this space here. Which is another thing which I like about this space as well, is that when you're in this position, you can kind of create a quick mental map of the space by having this and this here almost within the same frame of what we can see with the camera. The player will know that this space is connected to this space. They may not know what's in between it, but instantly allows them to again see and make a visual connection. And if we, for example, were to take the enemy out silently in here, we also get to see the space from a different area as well. So we can get a bit of an advantage, get a cleaner sight, because you see there's less cover on this way, rewarding the player for coming through this side way here, so you can get a even straighter shot through that one here. Now another thing that I quite like about what I've done with this space is a couple of other things. Is that the next space that the player can go through, we instantly have from this angle. And one of the things that you'll see, and I'll put the map up at the end of the video, but I've kind of angled the overall building. So that way, from this position, we have a perfect frame and a literal frame of to what's next. What I've tried to do is a bit of color coding with these yellow curtains, kind of hinting towards where the player should go next, that this will instantly grab the player's eye and move through. Another thing that I tried to do with a different route is by putting this sign up here, then they can see that this is a different route. Now I mentioned to you earlier that I've got a bit of contrast between the walls and the floor color just to help make things pop here. But these are the kind of main things that I focused on when creating this kind of space. But with that said, I'll show you quickly a bit more with the actual enemies in this space. Okay, so here we are now in the same position, but with the enemies actually patrolling here. So a couple of things that I want to do with the patrols, and please keep in mind, as I mentioned earlier, that the AI is still very much work in progress, so things aren't always working correctly from this. One of the things I want to do is by having an enemy up here, you can highlight that there is a path here, as well as having a bit of a balance. Because the fact that the player does have a bit of an advantage here, this way the enemy still has a powerful location as well, so they're kind of a bit more equal playing field. I know it's only 1 meter dip, but still it is easier to shoot down than it is up. Another thing that you may notice with my kind of cover here is I've actually raised it a little bit so you can see the feet through it. The reason for this is if the player comes in like now, where there is the patrols kind of overlapping and that you can't see them, I don't want the player just to run in and not notice. So they can see a little bit of activity with the feet around here, so that way they can always keep mark on where the enemy is and keep their eye on it. So that's some of the things that I wanted with that. As I mentioned before, that they kind of have a bit of a higher position. I also want to make sure that when I'm blocking out these spaces, the cover feels different. So we have a bit more plant based over here, we have the statues in that building, and then it's more about this high cover in this space. So again, the player has a bit of difference and knowing that the cover is different because they're entering a new space, as well as playing with the roofs for that as well. So again, there is that contrast so the players instantly know. So with that though, we can kind of time and go through. If the player wanted to, they can actually try stealth through here. Now it is doable, however, it is a lot harder. I can have a clear path here so that the path is easy to read, not only with the gate that I mentioned earlier, but also there isn't much clutter over here. But as I said, it's a bit harder to do. Another thing is that there is a bit of a stealth route down here. Now we can see the stairs here, but the player can time it where they can move around this space, kind of go through and make their way up and go through that space. Now ideally I would have working doors, so once the player shuts it, they could safely feel that they have advanced past the enemies. Now with that in mind, let's try actually move through this space. As you can see, they're not always giving me that love with the fact they are running through spaces here. So thank you for embarrassing me with this one. So we'll take them out quickly. So if we want to, there is these two enemies here. However, if we didn't take on the enemy here, then this one could kind of run out here. Now they are equipped with different weapons, this guy with a gun versus one with more of a rifle, and then we have the machete as well. Mixing up the different types of enemies, so that way the fact that this can play with different ones, so one might stay further away versus one that comes a little bit closer, and then one that rushes us with the machete here. Again, that is my aim, still going through work in progress with the AI, but that's kind of where things are going, so you can show this. But yes, I think overall I'm happy with it. I might reduce it just to 2 enemies because the space isn't exactly huge, but just something again that I'll be experimenting with on this section. So we'll now move on to the next section. Okay, now that this combat would be over, we're going to follow the main path. So when the player finishes, they'll move onto this space. So we can see as we get closer that there is another space down here. And what I've added is a decision point over here. Now we can notice that again, it actually goes further down. Again, representing what I want with the fact that we have that kind of feeling of it going further down into that kind of depths. And in here, we can kind of get a kind of scope of what's going on. Now, in contrast to that of the lights here, we have a centerpiece again, kind of a nice little statue, but one that actually eats up space, so players can't move around it. One of the things that I wanted to focus on with it was the fact that players can, and enemies as well, shoot through it if they get the right angle on it, but also knowing that it does block up some of the visual space as well. So players can have, a choice to come down here, then hop over into cover. What I'd like also with these statues is for them to become destructible cover, so when you shoot through the glass, it ends up turning into low cover. But again, different things. So the player kind of can go and move throughout the space. One of the things that I tried to do with this is have it more of a centerpiece focused. So the fact that, enemies can move around and that it's all about kind of moving through here. See, again, we can shoot through parts of it, but not every bit of it, forcing the player and enemies to move around to get to the best space that they can. Now with this as well, one of the things that I tried to do to draw the eyes for the player is having this window in here. So this kind of makes them move around and kind of stick around to this side with it. So enemies will be around here. I've got about 3 in here in total. I haven't done this layout as done up as the previous one, but you'd have an enemy that's easy to kill around this section, as well as one up on here, and maybe another one that just kind of walks around through the area and maybe gets up here. With this, one of the things that I wanted to do with this decision point and with the fact that there's enemies moving around is the fact that we have just one enemy here, so that if the player times it with the enemies moving around in these spaces, the fact that you have that chance to take one out and then follow them stealthily in these kind of routines to get past them. I have a basic one blocked out, so I'll show you briefly, but it is still very much work in progress. So what we can go through and explore here is a couple of things. One will be this kind of loot room over here, so we can come through and get some loot and some ammo as a reward for exploration. But if we want to come through here, then we have this kind of store here, where you can buy different kind of pictures and works of the artist in there, a cashier, some shelves, all of these things, but it's still built for some sort of combat, and that it doesn't always feel safe, which is what I quite like about this space. In here though, that we do have some stalls for toilets, so wash your hands, check out yourself in the mirror, but all of that to make this space kind of believable, and then the final exit where we would finish the mission and then looping it back around here. So this is kind of the space that we have for that. So it's quite a nice, much more kind of open and cleaner cut versus that of our previous one, but again, another space on it, and I like the decision point for players to be able to use that to decide. Now with that in mind, let's go back and kind of show the other route for players as well. So one of the things that I wanted to do was, as I mentioned, this sign here, but this will lead into an office here. Now this is built for combat as well, this kind of centerpiece. If enemies come through here, you can take them, but again, we've kind of obscured the view with this in mind as well. Pickups here, so with the fact that it is a side route, one of the things I also wanted to do with this is the fact that, again, you can come through here, but see it from a different angle. So you'll see that you can see this area, so you kind of put 2 and 2 together with the mental map, and again, we'll see this from a different point, move through the space in order to take enemies out as you progress through it. So that's kind of the space that we have here with it. So that is it overall. So I hope you have enjoyed my little combat art gallery. There is a few things that I want to tweak on, such things here. This is a bit too barren, so I need to have some cover for the enemies. They have some cover up here, but definitely some for them to progress on is something that I should add, as well as I think just tweaking the AI, and just messing around a bit more of the cover. There's some nice starting points with it, but there is still some things to work upon. I do like the kind of angle that you can see here, moving it around. But as I said, overall I'm happy with the progress that I made and that I worked on with it, and I feel that the space is kind of not only believable, but again, works for what the purpose is. So I do hope that you have enjoyed this. I will be making some small tweaks on this, but I might be moving on to a new level that I want to get done before the end of the year. But as I said, I hope you have enjoyed this. I hope you've liked kind of hearing my thoughts and my ideas when making this. And I say, if you do have any questions, just let me know. But again, all of that is here for you. So yeah, I hope you have enjoyed this, and take care everyone, and I'll catch you all next time. See you later, team.